First of all, we'd like to just have you explain a little bit your central thesis, what you think progressive needs to do to reach people here in Europe.
You know, I think the most important thing that progressives need to do is to speak to people, everyday people, in the language that they're accustomed to speaking around the kitchen table. That is, to speak to people's hearts first, and in some ways their minds second. Because what people need to know from progressives is that one is that we actually share their values, and the other is that we're concerned about the concerns of people like them. And if they feel that from us, then they're ready to listen to what we have to say. Otherwise, they feel like we're talking down to them, or that we're not speaking to what really matters to them.
Yeah, okay, so in your book, The Political Brain, you, in a very simplistic way, the central thesis, as you've just explained, seems to be that, first of all, you create a story. And if you feel the story, you sell the story. But when you sell the story, you have to be aware of what sort of impact that has on people. Would that be a fair summary?
Sure. I think in some ways, I guess I would say it today that our goal is to tell the truth evocatively. And we're a storytelling species. We've been around for about 100,000 years, and the way humans have always communicated knowledge across generations and to each other has been with stories. And conservatives are great at telling stories about why we have the economic crisis, even if they're not true. So they'll tell a story that says we have an economic crisis because we've been taxing and spending too much for so many years. Well, there's a piece of the story that in some European countries people have been living beyond their means, but a much bigger piece of the story is that the financial sector crashed our economy 3 years ago, and that was through all kinds of incentives for greed and through the deregulation of people who needed regulation because otherwise, frankly, they were going to take advantage of their fellow citizens. But we don't often do a good enough job telling those kind of stories of how it is that we got into this economic crisis in the first place.
But that's precisely the point. I think, particularly here in Europe, the economic crisis is the big story. So, how do you think we should sell the idea that the Party of European Socialists, the progressive way, is the best way out of the crisis? How do we turn that into a story?
I think the story that we need to tell is that people who work for a living ought to get something from what they put in, and that the average person shouldn't be worried about putting food on the table. They should be worried about their economic security. They shouldn't be worried about their dignity in old age, that they'll be able to be taken care of, that they'll be able to take care of themselves. Those are the principles that we had that our parents and our grandparents fought for years. And now they're eroding because there's some people who are making a lot of money speculating with our futures. We can't let it happen again. That, to me, is a story that I think the average person would really resonate with because it's true.
Yeah, I think that's a very good summary. It's not really whether we have Europe or not. It's what kind of Europe we have. Now, in terms of the platform that we established to sell that story, a lot of people would say that you need a protagonist, you need a personality. How do you think the European Union can move towards developing political personalities to sell the story?
Again, I guess that's one of our problems on the left, is that we often don't think about about picking leaders who can speak to people in a way that they can hear. And if you think about the people who have best been able to do that, I'm thinking of American examples like Bill Clinton, or sadly Ronald Reagan, who was able to speak to the American people in a way that they were able to hear, and in a way that has reshaped politics in Europe and in the United States for over 30 years. And you think of someone like Tony Blair, who, until he fell in love with George Bush and decided to invade Iraq, was very popular because he was very charismatic. We need someone who understands, and I think Europe really needs someone who understands, and the party really needs someone who understands how to talk to everyday people about what their lives are about and what their values are about. And who can respond to the fact that most people right now are feeling some mixture of worry and anger. and we don't want to hand those emotions to the right and basically say, hey, take those emotions and turn them against immigrants. Take those emotions and turn them against the idea of Europe. Take those emotions and turn them against the social safety net that our parents and grandparents spent so many years to build.
Well, we're 3 years away from the next European elections in 2014. As you've just explained, one of the big things we need to do is to create a political personality around which we can then sell the story. What else do you think the Party of European Socialists should do between now and the election in 2014?
I think what the party needs to do is to create is first of all to settle on what are its core values and to have its leaders agree, to the extent that leaders can agree, on what are the core values that unite the party, and then to figure out how to speak those values clearly to the average person in Europe. Because those two things, I mean, it's hard to speak clearly when you don't know exactly what you stand for. And you know, from what I understand, this is what the party is really trying to do now, is to really build, is to decide what are the core principles we want to stand up for. And to build a narrative around those core principles that people can hear and resonate with and say, you know what, that's my story. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear that there's a party that actually cares about working people like me, who are trying to feed our families, who are trying to have some security in our lives, and who just want to see things to be fair again, who want to see things be secure again, the way that they were in our parents' generation.
And just to use your clinical expertise, and just to end on a point of optimism, would you agree that in general, from a clinical point of view, that most people either are or want to be progressive?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I've done a lot of research in America on people's values when you present them with everyday language translations of progressive ideas. And I haven't hit an area yet where even in America, which is far less progressive than Europe, where progressive values, where clearly spoken and spoken with some passion in your voice, like you actually mean it, when those values don't actually beat out a conservative message. Because, you know, honestly, conservatives tend to offer people pretty one-dimensional messages. The problem to all of our problems is that we need to cut our budgets and cut taxes to the rich and cut regulations on big corporations. Well, you know what? That didn't do such a great job for us in the first decade of the century. It's not likely to do so well in the second decade.
Thank you very much, Professor Westen, for coming to Brussels and for giving us your valuable insight.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.